Gold will be on here shortly. I see her now. She just joined us with the Individual Architects as well. So our goal today is to present a few master plan ideas and options and landscape concepts for the Tempe Community Center campus, and hopefully receive some constructive feedback from the community. First, I can get this to change. First, here's tonight's agenda. First, we want to discuss the overarching project goals with you, as well as share some of the feedback we received from the previous Tempe forum, both of which are driving factors for the new planning. You'll see a little bit here. Then we'll go over some of the existing site conditions before showing both master plan options, landscape approach, and a couple of landscape concepts as well. And lastly, we'll touch a little bit on the schedule. So the goal of this project is really to create a guide or a roadmap where you that Tempe can use for the next 30 years. So our primary focus is to consolidate and locate the Human Services Department. The department is currently housed in 3 of the buildings on campus and at multiple off-site locations as well. So this will help increase departmental efficiencies and improve services to the clients as well. We also want to make improvements to the existing campus through enhancing pedestrian experience. This includes making the campus more walkable with better connectivity between buildings, with more shade, increasing accessibility and visibility to make the campus more comfortable to all ages and abilities, really. We also want to optimize use of the existing buildings and areas around the campus so that more programs and events could take place, making it more active throughout the day. We also want to improve traffic flow across the campus, making it easier to navigate through campus while making it safer for pedestrians walking to and from their cars. We also want to provide a streetscape that makes the campus more inviting. We want to open up the outside edges or the fringes of the campus. It could be more inviting and make it more visible from the outside. We also want to improve upon sustainability efforts. And lastly, we want to anticipate the campus's future needs or programming needs. I'll let my counterpart, Nicole Legal, discuss the next 2 slides that pertain to our most recent Tempe forum results. Nicole?
Hello. The Community Center campus provides a wide range of services to Tempe residents in a centralized location between the arts and culture, human service, and parks and recreation departments that each have a presence at this site. Because of this, community engagement has been a critical component of this project. To date, we have interfaced with the community through focus groups, held by video conference, and through a public survey made available online through Tempe Forum from October 8th through 21st. Today, we are giving a brief summary of the first round of the online survey results. For anyone interested in reviewing these results in greater detail, a PDF of this presentation will be made available through Tempe Forum. The diagrams in this first slide provide a snapshot into the 220 participants that responded to this survey. The orange bars represent frequent visitors of various campus services, which we defined as visiting at least once monthly, while the purple bars represent participants who have never used a particular campus service. Over 60% of survey participants identified as frequent library users. Approximately a quarter of survey participants identified as frequent users of arts and culture and parks and recreation services. Users of the Human Services Department were underrepresented in this sample, with 80 to 90% of survey participants reporting having never made use of human services. This is likely related to the fact that human services is currently dispersed throughout various buildings on campus and lacks its own visible and dedicated building. Next slide, please. Survey participants were asked to rate satisfaction with existing conditions at the campus. Respondents reported greatest satisfaction with campus facilities and availability of parking, and reported least satisfaction with connectivity between campus buildings, landscape, pedestrian safety, and signage. This result is very much aligned with one of the primary goals of this master plan being to improve the pedestrian experience at this campus, in which connectivity, access, increased safety, and landscape improvements will be addressed. The pie chart on the right shows the primary means through which survey participants access the community center campus. 80% of those surveyed reported getting to campus by car, while 20% use alternate modes of transportation, including walking, biking, and public transit. Next slide, please. Survey participants were asked to rate importance of various amenities to be included in the campus master plan. The results show that all amenities were rated as important, with highest priority given to increased shade, improved walkability, and improved outdoor spaces for events and gathering. Next slide, please. This last slide is a summary of free response questions. We have read and will be taking into consideration all responses received, but for the purposes of presenting results, we have grouped and tallied similar topics that came up in the free responses. Without having been shown any potential site options, we asked survey participants to describe their preferred location for a new human services building. Most participants skipped this question, with 92 out of 220 responding, and out of those 92, 40% reported having no preference. So essentially, we received 53 responses with a preference, and those results can be viewed on the chart to the left. Since so few responses were received on this question, it's difficult to draw any solid conclusions. However, a third of those who responded thought human services should be located off campus, while the other 2/3 identified various locations on campus, including the south and north parking lots and potentials to renovate either the Pyle or Edna Arts Centers to be repurposed as a new human services building. Lastly, the chart on the right shows a summary of 112 additional comments received addressing a range of topics. Topics mentioned most frequently included improvements to the pedestrian environment, improved connections between buildings, increased shade, improvements to outdoor spaces, reduced traffic, improved parking conditions, and expansion of classroom, programming, and event spaces. Generally, the additional feedback correlated very closely with the priorities shared in earlier questions and the goals of the master planning effort. And Sean, I'll pass it back on to you. Thank you.
Sorry, Nicole. I'll keep my finger off the button while people are talking. So with the screen now is the existing site plan. We have 4 buildings that make up the campus: the Pyle Adult Rec Center, the museum, Edna Vale Art Center, and then the Tempe Center Library, kind of in the middle of the campus there. The existing site has one primary access drive that comes off of Southern, right between Pyle and the museum. It wraps around the Tempe Library and then splits into 2 roadways out towards Rural Road, one across from the entry of the library and then one adjacent or aligned with Laguna Drive, I should say. There are multiple solar shade canopies on campus as well, and I'll get to why that's important because some of these might be relocated, but we have a larger one in the middle parking lot between Pyle and the museum, as well as 5 additional solar canopies kind of down in the south area of the parking lot as well. So over the past couple of months, our team has analyzed and the existing campus. We've interviewed city staff and received a lot of feedback and focus groups, and all this information helps us in determining the 3 potential site plans that you're about to see. So each option takes into account consideration a new human services building on campus, vehicular movement through the campus, connectivity between buildings, as well as safety and security for the users. So option 1, just for sake of time, I'm going to kind of touch briefly on a lot of these changes, the major changes at least, and some of the pros and cons to each site plan. However, you can look at this in greater detail and spend more time on it, as this will all be up on the Tempe forum along with some survey questions as well. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe starts today and it ends November 30th. So option 1, the major change here, as you can see, is a new 2-story human services building that's in orange here to the south side of the campus along Rural Road. A new primary access road, which is shown in dark gray, hugs the perimeter along the west and the southernmost edges of the campus. This allows us to potentially close off one of the access points that are already existing between Pyle and the Art Museum. The History Museum. And this little sliver of orange here is a ceramic space at Edna Arts that's currently jetting out from the building here, but we're going to propose to do an addition to it on the side of the building. I'll explain why in just a second here. Some of the pros and cons. Let's try to move this screen. It's probably in the way here. Some of the pros and cons of option number one. You see the Human Services Building, its location here on the south. It is located away from the other campus buildings for increased privacy. However, it is furthest away from Southern Avenue and the many transit stops that are along Southern Avenue. It also requires, there's some smaller solar canopies in the vicinity right here, requires them to be relocated as well, which does have added cost to the overall project. And we also reduce a lot of parking to the entry of the library as well as the Edna Val Art Center. As this parking lot here is taken up by the building. The access road that wraps the perimeter of the site, having the access road along the perimeter does allow us to have more people and more eyes on the fringes of campus, which is nice because it helps create more safety. It brings people to the edges and it gives us more safety in those places. We also wanted to put the access points to the west side of Pyle Adult Rec Center. And what that does is it gives us a little more connectivity between the buildings. It pushes the road to the boundaries, allowing it to be more pedestrian friendly in between the buildings, making it more connected and more inviting to the buildings as well. The other end of the access drive is aligned with the Laguna Drive. And the purpose of that, actually, we learned from Tempe Transportation Department, is that many of the neighbors are requesting a traffic light at that location. So we think it's best to have the access points for ease of access at aligned with Laguna Drive in case of event of that new traffic light coming in. It'll be a lot easier for vehicles to come and go from the side as well. We also wanted to move the ceramic studio, as we pointed out earlier, to allow us to create a bigger courtyard space between the library and the Edna Val Art Center. And we'll talk about some of the landscape elements in just a little bit here as well. Option two, this one places the new Human Services Facility in orange on the north end of the site. It'd be a two-story building on the north edge of campus here and along Southern Avenue. So it is in close proximity to a number of transit stops. And the primary access road, again, hugs the perimeter of the site on the west and the southern boundaries of campus here. We have a number of pros and cons as well, but again, I'll just take you through some of the major ones. The new building, it is located between Pyle and the History Museum. And the nice thing is that it helps us improve the connectivity between the buildings. Much more pedestrian friendly, and pushing the roadway, the primary access road to the west again. It cut off, the roadway doesn't cut off that circulation or that pedestrian linkage between the buildings. Kind of makes a more of a campus feel, which is nice. However, the issue with the location of the Human Services Building being here is that we reduce a big number of parking spaces that are closest to the History Museum. This is really the closest parking lot to the History Museum, and we do reduce quite a bit. And another drawback is that we have the large solar canopy that is placed in the north parking lot here as well. That has to be relocated as well down into another lot. So it's pushing it further away from the buildings. Again, primary access road, we aligned it with Laguna Drive. One of the positives of pushing the boundaries, the roadway out to the boundary, is that we reduce the number of incidents between pedestrians and vehicles on campus. It's something that I didn't address on the option one, but it also works with option one as well. On three, we wanted to look at something a little different here, so we took a different approach. And with Pyle and the Edna Val Art Center, really sharing a lot of similar spaces or types of spaces in terms of what they need. We thought that we could erect a new building south of Edna Val Art Center, and it could potentially be the Pyle Adult Rec Center. We would move Pyle into a new facility, and with that, we would take the existing Pyle Adult Center, which is located in this location here. We would add on to it and make that Human Services Building. So they'd renovate it and make it their own building. Similar to option one, we have the roadway sort of hugs the perimeter of the site down on the south, but it's kind of a hybrid where it keeps part of the existing roadway that exists, that wraps the Tempe library. Some of the pros and cons to this site as well. First and foremost, excuse me, with Pyle and Edna Arts kind of utilizing the same types of spaces, it really, excuse me, sorry, scratchy throat. What was I saying? Anyways, the new Human Services building, the nice thing about the location is that it does, again, create a little bit more privacy. That road does cut off some of the connectivity between buildings, but it gives their building and their clients and the people that work in the department a little more privacy from the rest of the campus, which is nice. Location is along Southern, so it does allow for proximity of transit. All the transit stops are sprinkled in the letter C's here that you see. The site also allows for ample parking around the buildings. It keeps the parking around the History Museum for those that are going to that building. Also, still has ample parking around the Human Services building as well. Pyle, the benefit of Pyle moving down to this major courtyard here, again, when we move the ceramic studio, so the ceramic studio is on the east side of the building, and that opens up this big courtyard here. And what that does is allows Pyle to have an immediate entry off of the courtyard for increased collaboration with the other arts and culture groups. The perimeter road, again, we've got the traffic light on the south end of the road, of the perimeter road. And then again, we're using, like I said, we're using that existing street. So it's sort of like a hybrid. And again, this one keeps intact all the solar canopies. So the positive on this is that, there's no added expense to move solar canopies. And this really reduces the least number of parking spaces on campus as well. Campus landscape, I'll let Jeff Lochner with Dig Studio talk a little bit about this. Go ahead, Jeff.
All right, thanks, Sean. Okay, so as far as campus landscape goes, we tried to detail out the kind of key areas on campus. And we characterize those as the central plaza, the sunken courtyards, both north and south, and the streetscape frontage. I think the railroad frontage would probably expand, definitely beyond the Edna Bile Arts Center. But these areas, we felt we could make the most impact in engaging both the existing buildings, the new buildings, and ultimately the user experience. All right, next slide, Sean. Okay, so I'm going to show a series of slides that help to kind of define the areas just via precedent and providing theme that we can kind of, at least tell a story as to what what the look and feel could be of these spaces. So in the central courtyard, this first one is the urban forest, which is, we sought to define more of structured landscape, definitely softening things up with planting and providing more of a kind of vegetative, kind of more intimate experiences through, creating rooms and smaller spaces, but trying to keep everything as soft as possible through the use of landscape. All right, next slide, Sean, please. All right, on this one, this concept, the artistic expression, we're trying to use pops of color and more architectural kind of interventions to, provide a little bit more visual interest, potential wayfinding, but at the same time keeping things really, really flexible, super open in how the kind of ground plane and how you experience the sites, so that just to offer, just as flexible a programming opportunity as possible. but still keeping it fairly interesting through the use of lighting and other kind of vertical cues. All right, next slide, Sean. Now we move into the sunken courtyards, which, we're approaching them in two different ways, either kind of keeping them separate as amenities unto themselves, like directly associated with the library, or, proposing the idea of engaging the surrounding spaces a little bit more and maybe expanding public space, but creating, some interesting, I guess, changes in grade and changes in elevation, because we're offered, a unique opportunity in that these spaces already kind of have this terraced appearance, and without too much kind of added help, we can kind of create a fairly interesting landscape. So on this one, the Tranquil Garden, it was a much more passive use. I feel like this space could be, separated into two almost, and creating a larger patio experience at the kind of plaza entry to the library, and then minimizing maybe the space into a much more intimate scale down near the doors that are adjacent to the lower level on the library. Again, on this one, landscape and intimacy is key. Okay, no, you're good, Sean. Next one. Perfect. This one was a more active approach in trying to create more of a inclusive play experience that would engage. I think on this one, I think we're trying to engage or bring or make an attraction for more users to come and experience the library. This would occur right in the front, much more active in appearance. Again, taking advantage of the grade and providing more interesting interactive experience. All right, next slide, Sean, please. This is a kind of a potential layout for this space. You can see the variety of experiences. I think it's, we would definitely try to make it as inclusive as possible and as engaging as possible for children and adults alike. Next slide, please. All right, to the North Courtyard. This concept kind of removes or expands that central plaza between the three buildings. It actually creates more of a amphitheater space, off to the side as opposed to right in the middle as it occurs currently. And that would just kind of provide a little bit more usable space in the center, but then a true amphitheater experience to the edge of the library and then on down. Next slide, please. This would be keeping the enclosure kind of the way it is currently, but engaging with the adjacent kid zone a little bit more. Space, turning it into more of an exploratory play experience with more rich texture and patterning. Again, also taking advantage of the variation in grade that we currently have. All right, next slide, please. Okay, on to the perimeter. This theme is more of a softer landscaped approach, highlighting the plant material, creating more of a meandering trail, softer, more of a softscape experience that gives the opportunity to showcase specimen plant material and also highlight our water harvesting or LID techniques, and also hopefully incorporating into an overall kind of fitness loop, kind of shown in this upper corner here. All right, next slide, please. This one is a more structured approach, more architectural approach, where we engage more of the facades of the buildings, creating areas to circulate, but also areas to program or host events. This would expand usable space from when there's a large event at the large covered awning, and just give a little bit more of a welcoming kind of front yard appearance to the campus. Next slide, please. Okay, here are a few elements. As we kind of have gone through the process so far, we're thinking about producing these. It's kind of like we're calling it a kit of parts, where these could be plugged in, throughout the campus, wherever they may make sense. Just kind of ideas to help users engage, a little bit of a more varied use, and from gathering spaces to more reading private spaces to active spaces. Next slide, please. So we laid out two concepts, and obviously these will evolve, as the building placement gets narrowed down a little bit more. All of these really did focus on that kind of the central core, and how we can kind of create more of a, just a better user experience, a more connected campus. This one is characterized by, it's more of a sculptural approach with movement and forms at its base. Next slide, please. And on this concept, it's definitely more of a rigid architectural, more functional approach. A large plaza space covered in a grove of trees, structured planting, but still, even though it seems very kind of dense and lush, all of the space beneath would be programmable, would be open, and would have the ability to be used, in a variety of ways. I think that might be it, Sean.
Let me get the screen to switch here. Sorry, I apologize for the coughing earlier. Hopefully my voice got clear. So this is our current schedule. As you see, upcoming, right above the upcoming line is our public meeting that we're in right now. We do have 2 commission meetings at the same time right now. Another team member is actually taken care of at this moment. And then we have a Parks and Rec Advisory Board meeting tomorrow as well. We do plan, after this week, we do plan to try to limit down to only 2 master plans. So right now we're at 3, and we showed briefly 3 options. But we'd like to get down to 2 options, and then we'll have the 2 options for the next Tempe forum or Tempe public meeting. That is hasn't been scheduled yet, but I believe it's in January, before we go to our city council meeting. So again, now we'd like to hear from you. We do have on Tempe Forum now through November 30th, we do have all of these options in greater detail online. You can read them, look at the surveys. The surveys do allow you to rank or rate the options, each of the options, and try to get a feel for what you like for each of the landscape areas of landscape that we're trying to improve as well. And again, I want to thank you all for listening for the last 30 minutes, and hopefully you guys have some feedback for us.
Okay, thank you, Sean. And just so all the attendees know, we have 2 ways you can ask a question. You can type it in the chat, and I know a couple came through while the presentation was going on, so I'll read those, and Sean and the team can address those. But then also you can raise your hand and I can unmute you. If you're on a desktop or laptop, you hover over your name and the raise hand button will be on the right-hand side. If you're on a mobile device, you can click on the chat bubble and then it gives you that option and you'll see the hand emoji. So, and so we'll kind of go in the order as we get those. We'll try to track those as best as we can, but we'll get to you. And then as Sean had mentioned, if you want to provide more details in written, the forum is going to be up through the 30th. So just first, we've got Sean here in the Q&A actually, but if you want to put any other questions in the chat. And then Kim, if you want me to unmute you as well, just raise your hand. But the comment question is, I've heard the improvements, but the neighborhood impacted. How will this support neighbors in the neighborhood? It seems that the impacted neighborhood has not been taken into consideration. As a former president of Tempe Community Council, understand the need, but not at the expense of our neighborhood.
So that is the reason why we're here in these forums and public meetings, because we want to hear from the neighbors and those that live around here and how this will impact them. So any feedback that you can give obviously will help us for future, for the master plan for the next 30 years.
And then, so we have here, Byron had asked for the speakers to be introduced. I think maybe if you came on a little later, Sean and Nicole are with DWL Architects and Jeff is with Diggett Studio, and there are consultants to design what that plan looks like. But then Byron did also ask, has anyone considered the potential negative impact expansion of human services will have to the complex and local community?
That might be a better question for somebody on the board here, because they've been doing studies for the Human Services Department for some time now. I don't know if Greg, you can answer that, or you want to appoint somebody else to answer that?
Yeah, I know that. Sorry, guys. I know Greg was having technical difficulties, not to put you on the spot, but Naomi, Octavia, or Levon, if you want to answer, Greg hasn't been able to jump on just yet.
Yeah, this is Naomi, Human Services Director. Shauna, do you mind reading the question again?
Yeah. So the question was, has anyone considered the potential negative impact expansion of human services will have to the complex and local community?
So first I'll try to explain a little bit about the Human Services Department. The Human Services Department is made up of a social services division. We also have community partnerships and resources where our Tempe Community Council also operates, and with staff, as well as education, family, community support area, and a Kid Zone enrichment program. So we offer a wide range of services and programs within Human Services. And yes, we do offer programs for homelessness, housing, Tempe Pre, College Connect, and then our Kid Zone after school program, as well as some counseling program. As you heard earlier, our programs and our services right now, our staff are right now in different locations around the city, which does not really help us really efficiently and effectively serve the community with the needs that they may be having. So bringing it together, all the services in one place, we're hoping that this will be a more efficient way of serving the community, whether it's bringing in other outside nonprofits to provide GED classes. Again, we have counseling programs. So trying to offer a wide range and variety of services to the local community as a whole to serve their needs. And I understand that when that question is asked, I think it might be more directed as far as the work that we do with our homeless population. And there are homeless that do come to this campus. It is a library. It is something that happens across the nation in libraries because it is a public building. With us being on campus, we are able and will be able to provide services to those populations so that they can be better resourced and hopefully get them into some type of permanent resources and housing. The other thing that happens when we have all these programs together, the families, individuals that are coming to us for services, for instance, a family that's coming to us for housing, they're able to access some of those services on campus, library services, recreation services for their families. So we have looked at this as far as how does this resource the community? And so for us, it's about resourcing the community more efficiently, effectively. I'm hoping that answers your question. If not, and if you want to go ahead and ask me another question, I'm more than willing to answer that and to respond.
And so the next question, so it looks like Byron has a follow-up, and then we'll go up to the chat because I see there's two other questions there. But he is asking Naomi if the human services would be a 24/7 operation and will shelter be provided to those in need at this location?
The 24/7 operation, one of the programs that we have that is 24/7 is Care 7. We do not have any shelter as far as you're talking shelter as far as for a homeless population. That is This is not going to be a homeless campus. This is a human services campus to provide a wide range of services to the community.
And then there was a question if there was an option for somewhere other than this location.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, go ahead, Sean.
No, I was just going to say that might be another question for you as well. So go ahead.
As far as locations, when we first started looking at the Human Services Department was formed probably about going on 6 years ago. So we did not have a specific building for all of Human Services. Now, Social Services has always been in the library on the second floor. And we had another facility space study within the city, and that was looked at. The library campus seemed to be the location that was preferred because of the location, because families would be able to easily access us because of the public transportation. And again, because it offered them other means to interact with some of the library programs and recreation programs that are also on site, and museum as well. So we felt that the location as far as the library was a good fit for us.
And then, Sean, there is a comment question that please consider availability to features or areas for people with mobility issues, e.g. using a wheelchair. Sunken areas without a ramp removes those areas for people using a wheelchair or who have difficulties with using stairs.
Yeah, that's one of our key goals, is to make sure that the campus is more accessible. And this is campus-wide. Just so that everyone, like I said, so everyone with any age or ability is comfortable on the campus here. So that is one of our major goals that we're looking at.
And then there is also an additional comment or question from Kim about increased traffic and landscaping on the outskirts between the campus and the neighborhood has not been addressed. So I don't know if you want to speak more to how the traffic might be managed on the campus.
Let's first, do you want to talk, Jeff, about the streetscape?
Yeah, and I think as far as the offering of the neighborhood specifically, I think that was addressed in a previous phase project that I want to say is soon to be moving on to the next step in the process. So our focus specifically was more to help in the kind of grounding of the new buildings and the landscape, I guess, to the more commercial corridors.
And so we can get you more information as neighbors, but at one point we did have a landscape plan, I think is what Jess or Sean referring to, that was adopted for the area that would still see those improvements prior to this master plan, which is focused more on the siting and movement through the complex. So that will still be happening. I don't know if
phase one of that master plan as well, or that landscape plan. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff. That addresses some of those elements.
Yes, I believe it did. I believe there was, especially to the south, I think there was, additional trees planted, and definitely some more attention paid to the areas adjacent to the neighborhood.
Yeah, and I'm not sure how long that that landscape plan will be implemented, or how long it'll take for it to be developed. But it's not going to happen right now. I think they're getting a developer in spring.
Yeah, I believe the contractor is. I believe they just advertised for a contractor. Yes.
So we'll make sure that we update the project website with that information as well, so you guys can go there and take a look. But that would still continue. And then there's another question here from Richard: is one of the options more conducive to special events like the Tempe Tardeada?
I'm sorry. Can you repeat that?
Sure. Is one of the options more conducive to special events? So one of the events we have at the complex is the Tempe Tardeada, where it's in the internal courtyard.
Yeah, so what our goal is on two of the three options that we showed, what we did was we removed the ceramics area from Edna Arts to create a much larger courtyard space where the existing courtyard is now. And if you look at some of the ideas that Jeff is producing or proposing, we're really trying to create bigger settings, more settings for larger events, for intimate events, just to try to make the whole space more active. I think really all three options could really lose the ceramic studio. We can move the ceramic studio around. So really all three options can have that same similar large space courtyard in the middle of the buildings there.
I think that our landscape options along the streetscape and also, in expanding that central courtyard will just, in general, will help to provide more usable, programmable space to where, the festival isn't just limited to that parking lot.
Right. You'll be able to, I think, opening this up, no matter what option we give, opening this up really starts to invite people in from all areas. So you've got this courtyard, you've got these spaces out here where there's a number of events as well. It really starts pulling all those spaces together. And I think that's what the focus is going to be on with the landscape and the different elements that we're proposing.
Okay, and then another question, can you give an idea of the timeline beyond the City Council approval? That is, when do you anticipate consolidation of the Human Services Department? And if a new building is erected, when will ground be broken?
That is a great question. I'm not sure if he made it on here or not. Did he get in here? I apologize. We have no control over what happens beyond the city council meeting. Because right now our scope is just the master planning, and programming for the new facility and looking at the next 30 years for needs, the programming for the other facilities on campus here. So.
Okay, and then Naomi, did you want to add anything else to some of the responses so far?
I would just say the importance of having the human services staff all together is something that we feel very strongly about, because we do feel that we can do a better job as far as working together as a department to provide the services and programs that are needed within the community. So that's really the drive behind wanting a human services building where we can all come together and do our work the most efficient, effective way that we can. Thank you, Shauna.
So we do still have about 10 or 15 minutes. If anyone has any other questions, or if you want to raise your hand, I'm happy to, if you don't want to put it in the chat, I'm happy to unmute you and you can ask our consultant and staff that as well. So we'll give you just a minute here to see if anything pops up. Otherwise, as we've mentioned, through November 30th, we want to hear from you. So tempe.gov/forum. You'll see all the options up there, both in the layout as well as the landscape and all the different things for you to let us know your preference, as well as just open-ended for you to share any other thoughts on impacts or what you'd like to see. So let's see, can you please clarify how the sunken areas will be accessed for wheelchair users?
Sure. Right now, we're still entertaining multiple options on either raising them, to kind of parking lot or plaza levels, or providing, a series of switchbacks and ramps where, especially for the courtyard to the south, there definitely is enough space to where, if a series of switchbacks, we could make it ADA accessible. But we're still kind of exploring, and I think, that definitely is in the front of our decision-making process.
After this week is mostly concepts, and after this week, we're limiting down to two, like I said before, our two strongest concepts, and at that point, we'll start looking at more of the details and kind of appointing certain activities or things for certain areas now, instead of having like right now, if you go to the Tempe forum, you'll see, and what we just presented, you'll see many different options. I think we'll be down to just presenting just one or two things for each of the areas. Like I said, that'll come the next public meeting. You'll see what we're proposing for each space.
Okay, so from Janine, she says she appreciates the three options. Option 3 appears more functional, aligning the museum, art center, and pile on one side of the campus, like the function with easy pedestrian access, and that staff it in one location is a bonus. Byron is asking to get back with an answer to the timeline question. Byron, after we end the meeting, if you want to stay on, I'll get your email or phone number, or however it's easiest to reach out to you, and we'll get that back, as well as we'll make sure and place that on the project website as well. So if there was something we couldn't answer tonight, again, tempe.gov/forum links back to it, or you can go to tempe.gov//community services, and there's a direct link right there to the Tempe Community Complex as well. And then the other question, will all parking be covered and include solar panels, or the landscaping options all xeriscape? I like the arboretum idea. Collaborate with Boyce Thompson on this.
As for the parking lots, we're not anticipating adding any solar canopies unless Tempe has wants us to look into that. Right now, it's just an exercise, a master plan of the buildings. Obviously, more shade is always welcomed, and it's usually the top priority by many people. But again, at this moment, we're not proposing additional canopies.
And yes, we would absolutely keep it as xeric as possible. As many trees as we can get. And yeah, I mean, I think that's it could be an interesting collaboration. But I think we can just in our plant selection and specimen selection, take cues from the arboretum and incorporate this kind of like a museum of trees idea throughout the campus. It could be an educational opportunity for sure.
Okay, and I'm just looking to see if there's other questions that popped up. I'm not seeing any, so again, we'll hang out for a little bit and see if any others come. Otherwise, we look forward to hearing from you, and you're welcome to share that with your neighbors, with anyone you know, so that we get as much feedback as we can on the proposals.
Yeah, and once you go to the Tempe forum, you'll see that there's a way to provide kind of a ranking system or kind of a scale for all the different options. Scale of 1 to 10. What you like. So we can kind of get a feel for what options seem to be the most desirable to people that are giving us input, and also have an option to open-ended questions where you can actually put any input you want on that survey as well, so that we'll see all the information, and then we'll share it with Tempe and all the stakeholders involved.
Great. And Byron, I see your contact info, so we'll follow up with you there. Thank you, everyone.
Does anyone else have an opinion on option 1, 2, or 3 for the master plan? We heard one person suggest option 3. I was just wondering if anyone else has an opinion about those 3 options as well.
So Sean, oops, stop.